Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Negotiation Club podcast. This is the area where we talk to experts, practitioners, and other interested parties in the world of negotiation. And we like to understand some of the skills, techniques, and tactics that they use, and perhaps build them into our own practice arena so we can actually take ownership of them as well. Now, today, I am really happy to welcome you to listen to Luke Tomlinson. Now, Luke is a procurement professional, but also has come from a background of sales. So, Luke, over to you. Do you want to give a little introduction as to who you are?
Thanks, Phil, and thanks for having me. Luke Tomlinson started off in sales support, so working with account managers, sort of working behind the scenes as such, and then progressed. Dabbled in accounts for a few months, and then ended up in procurement for the last 4.5, 5-ish years. That's sort of me. I started off in B2B distribution, so very much a category management structure, and I've since moved on to end user telecoms sector, so a bit different.
Well, I've got 30 years in procurement, so having come from sales into procurement, I'm just wondering whether that's poacher turned gamekeeper or perhaps gamekeeper turned poacher. We always have this little bit of a knuckle fight between procurement and sales. But of course, the curious thing is that even when it comes to those different roles, in negotiation, we are often using the same sort of skill sets. So tell me, what's your kind of approach when it comes to negotiations? Do you have a particular style of your own?
So for me, it's about framing opportunities. It's conditioning language as such.
I like that. I often talk about conditioning language at the beginning of a negotiation. So if we are going into a negotiation, what are the considerations that you might pick up in terms of how are you going to condition the other party? So what kind of preparation might you be thinking of, and what are you going to do?
So I think for me, I'm a very data-driven person. So before going into a negotiation, I like to have the facts in front of me. What's the opportunity that we're going to, present to the supplier or the, in party, and having those facts in front of me. But I think as well as that, it's the people element. So I think depending who you're pitching to, that's who you. So you could have someone who's like, in terms of disc personality, someone who's a red, someone who's a blue. I think it's looking at the individual and framing the language around who you're talking to and combining that with what the data shows you. So, the data could be that, it's a really good opportunity for supplier. That's how I'd frame it. I'd frame it's a really good opportunity. If it's a situation where the leverage is probably not as good as you'd want it to be, you condition that language, you rework it and reframe the opportunity. So that whoever you're approaching, you're still selling the opportunity, even though at the time it might not present itself as an immediate win-win for them.
I like that. I like that. And the word you keep mentioning there is opportunity. So even though you're in procurement, you're selling the opportunity to the suppliers, to the sellers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, from my short time in the field, I've sort of discovered that, at the end of the day, suppliers don't have to do business with you. It's a two-way stream. So while you want the best deals, you want the best terms, you want the best quality, etc., the supplier wants the best relationship. And as someone in procurement, I want the best relationship too because it makes things a lot easier. But yeah, it's that opportunity for both parties rather than just a one-way street.
Yeah, and you just said there that the supplier doesn't have to do business with you, and you're talking from a procurement perspective. But of course, what's going through the supplier's mind is, hey, that procurement person doesn't have to do business with us either. So we've got
Yeah,
that common pressure ultimately, which is the buyer's worried about the sellers wanting to do business, and the sellers worried about the buyers wanting to do business. Now, I would imagine a lot of people listening here are thinking, well, surely a seller would like to sell no matter who it is. But have you got any examples where, okay, there might be selling, but there's a difference in the way that they're selling?
for example, uh, one seller might be trying to, we might not be an incumbent. So they might be trying to convince us to buy an incumbent's, their product instead of an incumbent's. So obviously from their side, they're probably looking, well, how can I influence the buyer to buy our product? What, it could be quality, it could be price point, it could be, whatever point they're centering on, they're going to be focusing on something, whatever it is. And I think as a buyer, it's important to try and recognize on the other end what element they're trying to focus on. So it's sort of almost trying to read into them. And I think then that's the point as a buyer, you can look to leverage. Say for example, the supplier saying, well, our products better quality. And then, reading into that as a buyer, go, okay, well, they're trying to sell it, their selling point is quality. Then for me as a buyer, it's, well, how do I maximize the value? Yeah, I may acknowledge it's better quality. But then I'd focus on the point that they're not focusing on. Like, well, the current product we get is a lot cheaper. It's a lot more cost effective and economical for us. But, I appreciate the opportunity you're trying to pitch me. And then I think from the buyer's perspective, it's sort of taking their opportunity based on quality and going, well, there might be an opportunity for you if you can do something on price, for example, to make it more economical. So for me, it's focusing on what opportunity they're trying to pitch, and then almost in a way countering it and framing there is an opportunity there if you concede a bit on, for example, price or payment terms.
Yeah, what you just said about recognizing what they're saying, that really is about listening. And it works both ways. I come back to the point what you said at the very beginning about conditioning. So it's conditioning is in many ways setting the expectations of the other party even before you make that proposal, before you make that concession. And I think what I kind of finding interesting here is that when you're going into the negotiation, you obviously have in your own mindset, your own mind, what you're trying to achieve, what you believe is important to the other person. And you obviously have in your own mind what you believe is important to yourself. Again, we can go into a conversation around what is of value to the individuals. Now, I have an example. Many years ago, I sat in a negotiation with a colleague, and I literally wrote everything that they said down. I ended up with 3 or 4 pages of A4. It was just nuts. Then what I did was I actually dictated it back into a Word document. And then I went through and looked at some of the common themes and the common things that was said by the other party. And having done that, I started to identify from that supplier what it was that they were interested in. So the speed of delivery, they really wanted something very quickly, but it didn't come across simple enough. So maybe it wasn't being transparent or thought through. So I had to literally write everything in order to identify that. But it was really an important lesson for me, knowing that they are saying something, but not necessarily being completely clear about it, transparent about it. But I think that's where we were talking. The suppliers know that the buyers might not want to do the business with them. And the buyers know that the suppliers might not want to do the business with them. So there is a real need to have that clarity as early as possible.
Yeah.
So I would go back to what you're saying here, which is about the need to articulate and set the expectations and conditions at the very beginning of the negotiation, rather than trying to be a fishing trip later on. So am I right in thinking that from your perspective, the opening statements, the conditioning language you use at the beginning, making something that's a negative a positive, if you can do that at the very beginning, that's going to help in our negotiations?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you do it that way, you're setting the scene really, and exactly what you said, you're setting the expectation. And I think it's almost like an opening pitch, really, from either side. And I think if you can lay that out at the foundations of that out at the very beginning, you're starting off on the right foot. and you can sort of frame the opportunity for either side from there.
Okay, so if we were to look at something or a technique that we can practice, because I'm always thinking about how do we take this and then practice it. The moment that we're looking to do here is the conditioning language.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the conditioning language we set at the beginning of a negotiation that allows both parties to understand what the expectations are. And of course, the dangers are that you go in with a pre-prepared conditioning statement only to find that that is the wrong thing to say. So you need to be mindful of the flexibility. If I'm going to go in there and say, right, this is the situation, and I've completely misread it, but that's what I'm starting off with. So it does need to be a balancing act between saying this is the situation,
Yeah.
but being open and having a back door to be able to adjust that as well. But the conditioning language is there.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, right. So, Luke, what I'm thinking here now is that we have a Luke Tomlinson negotiation card. Okay, and we perhaps call it, I don't know, conditioning language, and we talk about the importance of setting the expectations, which you can do by preparation and planning beforehand, but temper that with the ability to actively listen and react in real time as well. So we can practice delivering our conditioning statements at the beginning, but then trying to adjust and understand whether the impact is having the right impact.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that one.
Very good.
I like that one. All right. Sorry, and okay. So you've just mentioned, I'm going to go back. So this is what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen. At the end of the day, we're going to be practicing from this one, conditioning language. It happens all around us. It does have an impact on us. So that's what we're going to be focusing on when we practice with the conditioning card now. I want to go back though, Luke, because you did mention red and blue as a color scheme. Remind me what are you referring to there?
So with is something I did recently actually, is the disc personality traits. So
Okay.
so for example, I'm blue. I'm heavily blue. So we get blue, which is more logical, bit more cautious and risk averse, a bit more data oriented. Then you get red, which is a bit more direct. I think negotiation probably is often associated with red, and I think yeah, red's a bit more direct, and then yellow and green sort of yellow and green sit between. So yeah, yellow's a bit more outgoing, a bit more talkative, friendly, and then green it's similar to yellow in a way, but it's a bit more introverted. That's the way I'd describe it anyway. A bit more passive. Good listeners though. Good listeners agree.
You know what? You've made me think here because there is a really good friend of mine. In fact, there's a friend who came on one of the very first negotiation club cohorts, Kingsley. And I think Kingsley runs a company called Kinetic People. I'll put a link in there. And he literally does this disc profiling. It's really important. But the reason why I just highlighted that, because it made me recognize this conditioning language. The conditioning language is going to be both created by and delivered by an individual with perhaps a particular type.
Yeah.
So as you say, a red individual may be more forthright, maybe more, in your face, whereas a blue might be more focused on the opportunity and the numbers. I don't know about the yellow and the green, but I could imagine they might be more emotional tensed as well. So coming back to our conditioning card, the importance here, ladies and gentlemen, is that whatever you believe to be the conditioning language, don't be surprised that other people might see it completely different. We assume the other party is going to hear it the same way they're seeing. But if I'm a blue person and I'm talking to a red person, what I'm saying might not actually be interpreted in the same way. But if I'm a blue talking to a blue, it might be, wow, perfect. Yeah, you're talking my language. So just be mindful when you are preparing your conditioning remarks, when you are thinking about what you're saying, be mindful of the other party. Be wary of how they may interpret this. So you need to make that little bit of connection beforehand. Right, listen, Luke, I've taken up a good chunk of your time here. So, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the Negotiation Club is where we practice our negotiation skills. So this is not just talking about it, not just listening about it. This is very much doing it as well. So if you've enjoyed listening to this, obviously do a follow, look out for more of them, but also head over to the website where we've got these negotiation cards. And the whole purpose here is that you can listen to what Luke has said. You know, it can resonate, it might make it of interest, but more importantly, it's not just what Luke has said, it's how do I make Luke appear in my negotiation? And that you can do through negotiation cards. So pick up the conditioning card and try it in your next negotiation practice. So Luke, final words for you. Any additional pieces of wisdom or?
I say from me, going back to that point, um, procurement is and negotiation, I think in general, is very people oriented. Um, People oriented practice, and going back to the disc element of it and how you frame those and how you react to other people going, well, like for example, like you said, someone who's a blue going into negotiation with a red. I actually listened to an audiobook recently where one of the elements that they talked about with this was how you can react to people with who are different disc colors. So, for example, a red prefers more direct communication. They prefer things shorter. So, I'd say a word of wisdom for me would be when you're going into a negotiation, because it's so people orientated and people are so different, be mindful of how you deliver your message and deliver and frame that opportunity because everybody's different. And I think it is very much a learned skill. But once you're able to identify once you've built that relationship and you can identify how people react, it will make things so much easier.
I got a feeling, Luke, that we need to have another conversation about the skill of identifying that. But listen, Luke, thank you so much. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. And for the audience out there and the club members out there, as always, just keep on practicing. So long. Bye-bye.